British context, the school issue; Western world context, the public awareness issue and popularity of choosing year round. As an evidence of a risk to all kids of respiratory health and local climates, making them miss out on their sensory wishes devastatingly. A culture shift is apparent right now around comfort of shorts in cold, and newly from 2023, topics on several discussion sites are showing it massively. Story after story of big numbers of boys preferring shorts year round, often in whole friend groups sharing so. Before, I've always seen one-off mentions of a few kids here and there, but never before a mass numbers cascade of it like now. It's also if you find primary schools' uniform listings online, suddenly now numbers of them are doing something they've never done before, stating that some of their kids choose or like shorts all year round and expressing that they allow it. It's as if across schools a mutually understood culture shift has followed from the results to becoming freer about shorts because of the summer protests. But it implies that all kids everywhere now know that the safe choice to be a year-rounder exists. They may not. And terrible hurt will be done by believing they always knew. Achievements for the shorts identity. I'm autistic with a sensory issue for shorts and a deeply heartfelt identity feeling for it. As an adult, I have worn them year-round for over 30 years. I have it long-standing recognised as a need as an adult worker, going back to Britain's employment support system as was in 2009. This is a human rights precedent against school uniforms, and adult dress codes too. It just does not get past the media elite. I even got to announce it in a book, compilation Bittersweet on the Autism Spectrum, Jessica Kingsley, 2017. Where also I declared that it hurts to be a generation too old to be one of the summer schoolboy skirt protesters. And I wrote in a case that its editor, researcher Luke Bearden, had told to the National Autistic Society's 2015 Aberdeen conference. He had met a guy whose whole school outcome was wrecked entirely because he could not do exams, because try concentrating when your knees are on fire. My heartbreak. As a child in the 70s to 80s, I had the utterly cruel bad luck that both. I grew up in a place with a nasally irritating climate, Cardiff, which made catarrh symptoms frequent. It prevented me discovering that year-round shorts was a safe option and robbed me of wearing them in childhood. And I never met any other year-rounder to learn of its doability from. I, in the minority who a year-round short school uniform would have been right for instead of cruel, chanced not to have one. Instead, I got a school exceptionally against shorts, not allowing them at all above the first primary year above infants class. The result that I never wore year-round as a child is a deep, bereaved sorrow and heartbreak. Sensory comfort and deep, heartfelt identifying with this choice scream to the sky that I should have done it. From the nasal climate, the cooler months always appear to be full of colds, hence to explore a comfort in underdressing appeared harmful. This includes the specific autumn when at home I did try out the feel of staying in shorts through October. Eventually, the seasonal turn brought its usual sniffles and apparent startings of colds. Unable to discover by myself that year-round shorts are not harmful. In the world before the web, there was no known access to info on it. So I never made a free, informed choice not to do it. These nasally irritating climates are associated with long, narrow waterways. A Miriam Stoppard health column mentioned a Thames Valley catarrh like this. I picked up that the Volga basin cities in Russia have difficult air, maybe another example. It's such an impersonal circumstance. NB, outside school, nobody personally stopped me doing it. There is no parental not allowing in my story. Despite the contradiction in her conability by right-wing gifted ideas, my mother was a liberal parent. NB2, that I was never a kid who chased after being cool. I was incapable of being cool, too physical and toxic macho for me. I did not throw the shorts choice away to try to fit in with age prejudice and be cool. I can evidence so from my proud scoring of a victory against another similar age prejudice: fruit drinks. I was always conspicuous for doggedly liking Ribena, and nearing teenage, seeing it as part of the gifted ideal to encourage growing up. My mother stupidly tried to encourage me to grow out of it into the hot drinks. I spent my early teens under first a lot of nagging from adults before school teasing joined in to grow out of Ribena and into coffee for no rational reason, just ageism, and can proudly say I was only angered by it and stayed dug into my own taste and have continued to drink blackcurrant and other fruit squashes all my adult life, as always knew I would. That recorded in Bittersweet on the Autism Spectrum too. Now think of the horrific catch-22 vicious circle that my nose may have played up more because Long's discomfort was wearing me down. For after I found my identity and started year-round shorts in my 20s, my respiratory health actually felt improved and less catarrhal, even when still living in Cardiff, which only further proves right and justified how finding out that this identity really could be lived after all made me cry non-stop for 5 hours and become utterly broken like never known at any other time, weepy and only able to stare into space or stay in bed all day catatonically grieving until achieving my first winter. It will be an injustice beyond emotional coping to get classed with the kids who chose not to do it, instead of with my sensory kin, the kids who did it. If I can be up against that, unknown numbers can be, including of present kids. But nobody discussing the present shorts phenomenon appears to know about nasal climates, and as most of them see the subject wholly by their own local experience, what can force them to know? It should be very different now when the web exists, which means near everyone has access to the info that year-round shorts exists and is safe. But what if a kid's web access is limited, and their experience never leads them to research this, or lacking access because of poverty or household difficulty with IT? Or what if cold-like symptoms panic their parents into not allowing shorts? Or imagine wanting to be one of the proud year-rounder kids, but having social services expertly tell you it's harmful or intimidate your parents. I saw an actual topic where a school treated a parent as bad for letting her son wear shorts. I read of, back in 2008, some social services starting to include winter shorts in the list of causes for concern against parents. So consider the fairness of back-perceiving those kids as not being year-rounders because they were oppressed out of it, which was not their fault. Yet the year-round short school uniforms that are an astounding cruelty to kids, to the majority who have them, still exist and were not challenged by social services. The Bishop of Monmouth found it a really good point that exactly the same thing at the same time could be in one place a social services cause for concern and in another place school uniform. Both instead of either social services or schools having to take any account of sensory issues, even though they are a known fact. Are we moving away from that horrific authoritarian chaos now that year-round shorts as personal choice have grown so popular on their own merits and now being acknowledged so by schools? NB. I'm a libertarian writing for personal choices. This is totally opposite to the pedos who romanticize shorts uniforms and actually want disciplined powerlessness around them, and by it say a lot about how they came to exist. That those uniforms would have been right for me and it was cruel to get the opposite is a minority situation that changes nothing of the shockingness of allowing the majority experience of them to exist and continuing to in an era supposed to be hot on child protection. NB, I'm not a parent, in case you are going to ask my handling of parents' dilemmas. I don't want kids because of medical tragedies or accidents, and the victory it would be for anyone who has hurt me if those happen to my kids. Schooling background. My schooling was an abused disaster in a much more serious way, work pressure. My autistic early reading was disapproved of by my infant school, but taken for giftedness by family and an advisor whom my mother turned to. They instantly sent me to private school, a boys' one, Monkton House, but after 4 years were dissatisfied with its standard streaming and a trauma with PE showers. The advisor actually wanted to send me to public school, but I disliked the boarding idea and declined. Then, age 8, they sent me to mixed-gender private school, Balfour House, of utterly hated memory by a good number. More radical for giftedness, meaning recklessly greedy, unwilling to advance streamy. Balfour was a short-lived, grimly rule-bound, shouty, gloomy, poorly resourced, shoestring operation with tatty books and scant extracurricular life that defeated itself by the consistently bad results to hurting kids' nerves and confidence by fear, remembered as worse than the rival comprehensives, nothing posh about it, nothing whatever like public schools. I was a scholarship boy and did well for 3 years, riding on my early learning from before it. But just when the gifted myth had taken on a life of its own and I had no say over my own abilities' limits, I could not do the long answer problem-solving homework you get at this later stage. This followed a pattern now known in autism research by Lorna Wing. It became a horror pressure trap and breaking point at age 14. Then the resulting adolescent unit was controlling too, and threatening of compulsory powers unless I would completely change personality in the ways it saw fit. This forced me to escape from it by lying that I still believed in Balfour and returning there, under reduced expectations, until eventual escape from and damaging of Balfour by deliberate failing that wrecked its old propaganda and helped lead to its closure. These events destroyed my chance to be a child author too. The school uniform background. My doubleness of loss, the uniform bad luck as well as the climate, must be linked. Year-round shorts uniforms were never much of a thing in South Wales, and why? Unless it's because of the climate. Throughout my childhood there I actually never knew these uniforms existed, nor did my mother. This could happen a near half-century ago in South Wales, and even at a time when the Prime Minister was an MP for Cardiff, James Callaghan. Yet it would not be possible still today in Edinburgh, where they are a prominent sight. I am Scottish. South Wales was even an exiled childhood, not home, so no wonder I was not micro-evolved for its climate. But shorts never arose to mention in letters from Edinburgh relatives, and I never had cause to visit Scotland in winter, at a time when Scotland's poshest schools still had them well into high school level. Balfour, had a totally longs uniform, not allowing shorts at all above the first primary year, which was age 8. Yet this in a right-wing private school in the 70s. The exact setting where era memory would expect most likelihood of the opposite. All era rememberers need to know that. It's a mercy that Balfour did not allow miniskirts and allowed the girls woolly tights, anti-leg cross genders. But that did not prevent the triggering discovery from a former girl with an equally damning view of Balfour as me, that even with this the girls found skirts cold, and some tried to gather in the loo at break times until the deputy head mistress, herself a woman, cleared them out. In my early time there, girls with socks always seemed to have long ones, another mercy, and I don't know if they were made to. That had changed by my second time at Balfour. That would never have happened if the unit had not behaved so tyrannically. The misery familiar to all followers of this subject had struck there too, of girls allowed short socks in summer, some wearing them into autumn, while boys not allowed any equivalent. It's significant that Balfour still felt a need to give senior and junior boys a uniform difference, in a not cruel way too, but I've never heard of it in any other school. They had different colour blazers. Only senior boys wore black blazers, junior boys and all girls wore blue blazers. It seems insulting to the girls that they stayed in the same colour as meant juniority for boys. But no women teachers showed any issue with it, and both senior and junior deputy heads were women. They all went with singling out senior boys as needing to look more like dull businessmen than all the other kids. An unpopular great discomfort in the uniform that the head obsessed for and held us all to was to keep top shirt buttons done up. That was bad for sensory issues too. Neither school allowed us to go home in PE kits. It mattered less at Moncton, with shorts allowed all through junior primary. At Balfour, it was despite being bused to PE at a rural site that in my time had no showers to change for, and delays to PE held up the main school buses. Yet even on a hot afternoon we had to change from comfortable kit to uncomfortable uniform just to travel home in. Going home in kit has been older boys' best means to get accepted in shorts and win some ground back from the stupid bullying culture against them, and we never even got to share in that. Why did I never meet one? Now the key thing. I never knew any kids who chose year-round shorts to learn the option from them. Why not? When what's happening now tells us there are such great numbers of them everywhere that every school has them. There must have been the same proportion of sensory preference among kids then. We were the same species. If this was because of South Wales's climate, then unless folks realise these climates exist, which of course kids don't, they could still rob kids now. When I was first conned to believe in Balfour, it included because looking ahead I knew nothing contrary to its dismal line of no shorts. Streaming into senior high school at 8 would surely have meant no shorts for me at any school, whatever I thought of Balfour's junior uniform not allowing them. But I would never have believed in Balfour, so its horror outcome would never have happened. If before then I had known a year-round shorts kid and hence become one myself, even if just outside school. I was in a gifted Saturday club during my Moncton years, a piano class for 1 year, and an Anglican church, and in none of these did I ever meet such a kid. I was never a cub, probably rightly because family did not think scouting would suit me as a bookish, not sporty kid. So I never knew cubs still had a year-round shorts uniform then. No classmates who were cubs mentioned the uncool fact. A random sample of life elsewhere. We were in close touch with a mother's school friend's family who lived in Weymouth. No shorts experience came from them either. neither uniform nor knowing a year-rounder. Has coastal Dorset the same problem as South Wales? If year-round shorts uniforms really were as widely still practised across 70s Britain as discussions all now say, and some folks make it sound near universal, how did our friends randomly in another region not experience it either? At age 7 at Monkton, I had a new classmate who looked like he was going to be a year-rounder, which shows it was allowed. He answered that his dad believed we should wear them, when in all innocence I asked him, "But aren't you cold?" But yes, he was cold, and he did eventually get longs after all at the start of winter. Perhaps I helped him to, and if so, unknowingly harmed myself. In the adolescent unit, at 14, there was a girl who experimented with bare legs for a few days of early winter, spotted my reaction, and guessed correctly that I might like to be in shorts and suggested it, and mentioned having a cousin inclined thus. But she did not say he actually did it year-round, nor arrange any contact for me to learn from him. It was 1982. The unit was a medical institution and part of the health service, and its team included Welsh writer Harry Pritchard Jones, dad of Boris Johnson associate Guto Harry. The unit did not inform us that year-round shorts was a safe, okay choice that would not harm health. So that moment to find my identity was lost too, and for that girl too, whose own bearing ended after that and she just went into jeans, as if she had been trying to find it out for herself too and been let down by the unit too. Adults. Then for adults, the employment culture just wants us all to fit into the perceived adult look, without caring a damn whether it's after the arbitrary potluck of our school clothes was right or cruelly wrong for us, and just to fatalistically accept whatever school regime we chance to have. The disgusting, sick injustice and hurt done by 3,000 years of psychology claims for letting go and one-sided forgiving and not fighting back. To con wronged folks out of pursuing fairness struggles angers me beyond belief. If I had let go, I would never have discovered my autism, for I discovered it through being anti-school. Then I would never have heard of sensory issues. See how right and lucky it was that I was already anti-school, with a stance including against being seen to accept dress codes, and had made life choices to back up that before discovering my shorts identity happened. So that it did not horrifically hit me in a conventional position of trapped dependency on a dress-coded job such as a mortgage. NB sensory issues have been known since before the I. Daniel Blake welfare regime was introduced, and the big autism charities cozied up to the political elite never speak out against forcing anyone into a dress-coded job. Anything you miss as a child and only find as an adult. You choke to know you could have died before you found it and never had it at all. Military mortality does not care either. I'm named in memory of an uncle who died in World War II, aged 23. And I had already lived through the Kuwait War's call-up scare before finding my shorts identity in my 20s, as well as survived the suicide outcome potential in my homework pressure horror at Balfour. Not in media. Clearly, folks each remember the position they locally knew and tend to think it's how everywhere was. Unlike New Zealand's One News channel, who took up the issue last year, story "Do Winter School Uniforms Need a Rethink?" It was never in the media I saw as a kid, and I followed news more than most kids. TV was biased against questioning school authority. It never told about shorts uniforms to us who needed to know. while to those experiencing them, it never told them that opposite cases like Balfour existed. It left us all in our completely different local bubbles. Just once I was struck and racked with envy to see two older primary-age boys singing carols in shorts on Nationwide. But I suppose the warm TV studio must just have enabled that unseasonal style choice for that occasion. But more recently, and I think noughties by its look, a BBC van was photographed accompanying a tour by Newport Cathedral Boys Choir, shown wearing a shorts uniform standing in thawing snow, so that BBC Wales endorses that, but has never covered the nasal climate issue there, which those boys in South Wales had luckily escaped. Deeply grateful, I got a kind acknowledgement of that from the Bishop of Monmouth. As being a top choir boy is an unforceable vocation and choice, those boys must all have found that experience okay. The same BBC as should have been made to include in its inquiry into its bad history towards kids that the Savile scandal forced it into, the bone-chilling, disgusting mass hate crime that was Blackadder episode 26, which endorsed, incited, gloated over, blamed victims for, and made fun of psychological damage by the gender discriminatory and illogical school bullying against shorts by age that used to exist intensely and tragically strongly. Despite cast member Stephen Fry, in his school memoir Moab is My Washpot, proposing as definition of tyranny, asking folks to apologize for anything that is not their fault. The traditional era. There are completely mixed messages on what history to draw from the mid-century traditional shorts era, which the bullying culture lasting long after it was tragically a reaction against. I started at Moncton, aged 5, in 1973. Yes, as painfully close to the traditional era as 1973, and utterly unaware that it had happened up to only a few years before. My mother obviously had lived in that era. She never told me a word that it had happened. Why rock the boat? Until, in the same year as I went to Nasty Long's Balfour, when also we moved in with my grandparents, and that introduced me to their Just William books. That made it necessary to tell me about it. The most important thing she explained was that though that era's garment was referred to as short trousers, it and the socks came right to the knee and practically met, so was not like bare leg shorts as modernly known. That seems largely true of the interwar period, and I will add a point picked up online that she did not think of, that coats came below the knee. But this picture clearly does not match many memories from the 50s onwards. There are clear knee cruelty memories around from then, and clarity that more modernly uncovering shorts were being worn then. So it's since the 50s that the cruel uniform practice with forced significantly bare legs has clearly existed. But when folks post sweeping memories as if that's what all boys then were wearing and say it was, or that Yahoo this generation had that and survived, etc., they remember from their own lives' bubble again. There are other posters who make the point about longer to the knee and not much of any leg. The longer style was also referred to as knickers to distinguish it. So clearly there are two conflicting types of memory from them and a mixed experience. That entitles those of us who were not there to sift the evidence for ourselves and not to take from them any line of, you must accept what I say because I was there and you were not. There is always someone else with a conflicting memory who can say that too. So the position had obviously become an unjust chaos of local potluck, as it still is. Then the interwar style knickers disappeared in the 60s as the option of long trousers became established in society, but not yet in a lot of schools. The value shift accepting shorter shorts came first, then exactly the impact of being bad to keep boys in them helped longs to come into use for all ages. That indicates that the phenomenon of cruel, significantly bearing shorts uniforms peaked in the 60s, created by how attitude to kids navigated the period's costume shifts, and has slowly declined ever since by one struggle victories, but persisted in existing. But that is not how my mother perceived it at all. She told me that modern longs had come in and replaced the old knickers 20 years before we were talking, which means from around 1958. Maybe longs entered the mix from then, but no source I've ever seen dates the change to that early. And in my own researching as an adult, I was severely shocked to find amply photographically proved that the knickers were still a standard wear in the frieze of 1963. Yet by my mother's dating, and she had lived at the time, modern longs should have taken over by then. So her memory had pushed it all further back from its devastating closeness to my school days, narrowly missing it. Also, she believed that the change had been the end of any issue of shorts in winter. This is important to tell all the folks who make posts portraying and who in their own bubble remember shorts uniforms being still near universal in the 70s. From her bubble of Cardiff and her friends' family's bubble of Weymouth, she had no idea or belief that any such thing was happening or possible. No experience of other kids as my parents nor the media ever showed her so. Learning of that past era resulted in some conversations questioning what the protection from snow was like, and getting a picture that sounded drafty but practically covered, if by turning up of sock tops as last resort. This seemed a common sense reconstruct in my mother's memory, so that was a reassurance, because significant bareness in snow would obviously have been impossible. Neither of us knew, as devastated me to learn later, that at that very time in Edinburgh's posh schools, quads covered in snow and ice were full of large numbers of boys in 70s shorts with a lot uncovered. In my generation. While learning of the past era prompted me to test the feel of staying in shorts at home through October, and it was beautiful, only to have the nasal climate leave me mourningly clear that year-round wearing was an impossible dream that could not exist. Not realizing. As my mother was too socially conventional and wanting to just be safely ordinary, ever to be happy that I'm anti-school, even with my pressure abuse story, I was never psychologically able to reveal the truth to her that shorts uniforms still exist. It would have let her seize on it to treat my shorts wearing as a contradiction of being anti-school. So for the rest of her life, including when came to live near Edinburgh in old age, she remained oblivious and completely misperceiving of boys' lives in my time. NB, I've seen posts online of folks not realizing either. Shorts uniforms are infrequent enough now that some of the population don't realize, including, didn't think they still existed. I've never heard of a school not allowing trousers before. I am horrified to discover that this cruel and poncy tradition still exists. It all shows folks have a chaos of different, incomplete perceptions of both that past era and the present. In the present, it includes seeing a post that arrogantly disbelieved another post's story of a boy and her family wearing shorts in high school because he would be a laughingstock, at a time in the noughties, already after a school strike in Devon for shorts had made news and been noted as a shift away from the bullying culture. Recently, I saw a ridiculous post from Birmingham on French TV YouTube video, Why Do British Wear Shorts in Winter?, claiming that no adult men in Britain used to wear shorts outside team sports as recently as the late noughties. I remember totally otherwise. And there have been adult shorts in closed shops all my adult life. Who does he think was buying them? Another claimed that teenage boys in the 80s, no teenage boys in the 80s wore them, which outside school I'm glad to remember otherwise. These are more examples of folks seeing only their own life's bubble and believing it represented everywhere. But when you hear several of them, you see how everyone's bubbles have been so randomly varied. Awareness now. Everything I'm reading now about all the present year-rounder kids in such great numbers and existing everywhere screams that by any fair odds I should have known one and been saved from my heartbreak by it. Look at all the topics and videos that get posted on that one kid who was always in shorts, as if everyone knew one, maybe more so in the US and Canada where uniforms are less universal, but those posts resonate with many, that's why they get posted. Or a year-rounder adult would have done equally well, yet I never knew one. This when, if it happened by age 8, it would have utterly changed my life. A road never found. My serious abuse story averted because I could never have believed in Balfour. While to all the folks without these emotions, the nasal climate issue sounds silly and they don't get the urgency for my sensory kin to try to pass it on. Both the nasal climate tragedy and never meeting a year-rounder, as they happen to me, obviously happened and can happen to unknown numbers of kids. How many, unbearable to think of, will never in their lives find they have this identity? Or find it when trapped in a mortgage and dress-coded job? Or too socially fearful of gleeful pressure to prove able to do it to start, or in old age when their health no longer feels up to starting, or when living in a non-Western religious country. While my bereaved grief for it could be shared by folks who grew up in the unfairnesses of non-Western religious country, or religious fanatic families, or violent surroundings where they feared prejudice, or interfering social services stopping them doing it, which that we be spared nothing grievously looks like it happened in some places from c. 2008, as I mentioned. Notice how the experience of late discovery of Short's year-rounder identity strongly resembles late discovery of an LGBT or ethnic or neurodivergent identity. It helps to show that sensory issue identities, or dress comfort identities, choose which to call them, are another category of life-defining minority identity that merits adding to identity politics. At all ages, shorts in cooler weather have seemed everywhere to be in a lot more visible existence and being a known thing within the time when the web has developed than before it existed 30 years ago. So it needs asking and researching. Has the web made a decisive difference to awareness and everyone's means of knowing? Not only in the tragic places with the nasal climate, but everywhere. So from multiple causes, no, there is cruelly not a clear picture that kids all have choice to become year-rounders and can have their wishes accurately judged from whether they do. If folks now all start believing kids all have that, some will be grievously wronged on top of an already heartbreaking loss. But sensory issues prove they all have a human right to the choice to be year-rounders and to the information that it is a safe choice.